This is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Oh, not so bad. Yourself?
Good. You watch that baseball game last night?
Nope.
That's what I told you. I'd hit you with something easy today, and I knew that was probably the furthest thing from easy for you.
I don't care about baseball whatsoever. What I did watch was, I think it was episode 3 or 4 of Night of the Seven Kingdoms, one of the Game of Thrones spinoffs on HBO. And we got to a reveal at the end of that episode early on. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet and that wants to, but it was.
So when you say we, I mean,
my wife and I.
Your wife and I, right? Or your wife and not your wife and
I don't know if you were there, but sure.
I wasn't there. So you guys wait till both are available to watch the show, right?
Yeah, there's a few shows that we'll watch together, and that's one of them. I'm not sure if she's totally into it yet. I'm kind of half into it. I think we'll see what goes. I like Game of Thrones, so. But yeah, there's that one. I think Shrinking is another one. If you haven't seen Shrinking on Apple TV, fantastic. That's another one that I think we're caught up on that one. I think an episode probably came out last night, and we got to catch up on that one. But yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I've been doing lately is just planning travel. I feel like I'm booking flights and booking hotels nonstop. I mean, we've got a lot of conferences. I mean, this is a conference season for a lot of people right now in March, right? It's a big conference month. But for us, it's really, the summer is the hot time for us, right? But you've got to start planning ahead, because if you're not booking a couple of months out, the best deals and the best hotels and stuff like that are gone. And pro tip, usually you can book a hotel for a conference even if you don't have approval, and you can cancel. You just have to know the cancellation date. So put something in your calendar, say cancel this hotel if I haven't gotten approved. And that way you get a room at the hotel where the conference is being hosted, so that you're not kind of booked out and staying a mile away or worse.
Oh, yeah. So we've got discounts to help with that. So if you're going to EIC in Berlin in May or Identiverse in June, head over to idacpodcast.com. We've got a couple discount codes. I think we're at 25% off for both, which is no small chunk of change to save. And I think there's probably a couple early discounts still available. I know Identiverse has one that's still available. So if you are listening to this as we record it today on March 12th, and I believe this comes out next Monday, kind of relatively recent, but take advantage of those discount codes. It shows support for the show that, hey, the podcast can bring people, and especially for folks like Cooper Cole and for Cyber Risk Alliance. They've been really great partners for us and really kind of welcomed us into the fold and helps us bring content like that. So take advantage of those discount codes.
Yeah, and I like to tag on a little bit of extra time to these conferences. So I was talking to a coworker today who was just out in Vegas. I'm going to take an extra day. Denise and I are going to the Sphere to see the Wizard of Oz. It's like a 4D experience, for the fourth dimension being wind and
space and time. Oh, wind,
wind and rain, and apparently broken up leaves. They blow those around during the tornado. I don't want to give away too much, but that's what I learned today. So there's your spoiler. And then obviously in Europe, I mean, if you're going to take all that long flight all the way from United States to Europe, you should spend a little extra time. So I'm going to Estonia. I'm going to sleep on Joseph's couch. I hope he has plenty of room at his house.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just finding out about that now.
Why don't we go ahead and introduce Joseph and not put him on the spot? Joseph, you do not have to host Jim. Jim is a big boy and get his own.
Him and his wife is welcome to come visit. And yes, we do have space for you to stay.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like an open invitation. Maybe next year.
So that's Joseph Carson. He's the host of the Security by Default podcast. Been going on for about a year now, I think, is when you started that podcast. Is that right, Joseph?
That's correct, yes. Yep.
So I listened to a couple episodes. I didn't realize you had started it, so that's my bad, because we haven't talked in a couple of years. I think the last time you were with us was 2024, around the summertime. Mm-hmm. So we're due for an update. I guess tell us about Security by Default, because for what I've heard so far of the 2 episodes I heard, you did one on gamification and another one on password hacking that were both kind of recent. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but let's spread the word. Another great podcast out there.
Awesome, thank you. So one of the things, I've been doing podcasts for many years. A lot of times, in the early, maybe 7-8 years ago, I was being a guest on lots of podcasts. And then I started one which was called, at the time, was Access Denied. And that was in conjunction with one of my previous companies that I worked for. And ultimately, at the end, I wanted to do something of my own. I wanted to do something that was purely mine, and have the ability to decide on which guests and which topics to talk about and the things that I enjoy. So I decided, and one of the things I believe is that security should be for everybody. It should be something that shouldn't be limited. It should be, and not just by design, but by default. So when I was coming up with the name, I was like, it should be something that we all have the opportunity of using and getting. So that was the start of the podcast. And one of my concerns was about, when you're starting off alone, you don't know what's going to happen. So, the good thing is I'd had lots of experience before, and lots of trials and tests and and the goods and the bads. And going it alone was a bit scary. It was something that I was not sure about, but it has turned to be one of my favorite things to do all the time. And it's going back to what I enjoy doing is getting to talk to really amazing, intelligent, insightful people. And it's an opportunity for me to learn about, what's new in their world. And even just, chatting with friends, if it's, for me, it's an opportunity just to get on a call for an hour and chat with friends and have a good catch up. And that catch up, I think that sometimes a lot of people learn from as well. So I was really kind of blessed to kind of have amazing people. I've had Joe Grand on, which is like world famous hardware hacker, which we even got to catch up recently. He came to Talon to visit. So that's something to watch out for in the near future. There's some exciting things coming out of that. Even the likes of Joe Sullivan, who came on the podcast as well. So for me, it's an opportunity for me to learn, to really kind of get to chat with friends, because sometimes you're not traveling, you're not in events all the time, or you miss each other. It could be a year or two before you catch up, and I think it's really important to find a time and allocate it and make it available for everyone to learn from, because it is very educational. So it's a bi-weekly podcast. It's available on all streaming platforms, and it has focus around cybersecurity side of things. So a lot of CISOs comes on, a lot of government advisors, hackers have been on, and those are really kind of making a lot to make the world a safer place, and make our lives protected and resilient.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was listening to the one with, I think it was Evil Mog.
Evil Mog,
that you had recently. And first of all, great name, or moniker, or whatever you want to call it. It's podcasts are a second job. Would you agree? Like, how much time do you spend on the podcast outside of doing just podcast stuff? Right? You have a day job. We have a day job. A lot of people think that Jim and I do the podcast full time. That would be really nice, but no, absolutely not. Like, we have a day job as identity consultants, and you've got day jobs.
Yep.
Talk about sort of that split where you have to be all right, it's podcast time, and that takes up nights and weekends, I'm assuming.
It does. I mean, I do a lot of the editing myself, a lot of the article writings, the planning, the scheduling, the preparations, all of that I do myself. And it is, and I do have a day job that, my day job is a lot of research, understanding the threats, understanding the landscape, and reverse engineering, and looking at best practices, and writing lots of blogs and content and so forth, and also speaking at conferences. And in my personal time is almost the podcast has become a hobby in some regard.
Absolutely, I'm the same way. It's all I do.
And it's not cheap to do when you think about a lot of the technology and hardware that we invest into. We were chatting before, in the pre-show about comparing cameras and comparing road equipment and other types of things. And for me, it does make our job a lot easier when we invest in the right tools, and the quality gets a lot better. So for me, I've learned a lot of editing, a lot of kind of looking at how to get the best quality out of the episodes as well. So it does take a lot of time. I wish I could spend more time on it, but it is a lot of fun, and it has become my hobby in many regards. It's something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You mentioned we were kind of nerding out over gear and stuff, and Jim's eyes are kind of rolling back into his head. Like, I feel like the way I am with baseball is the way Jim is with the hardware technical kind of stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, folks, I had to put up with about 10 minutes of camera specs and what do you think of this camera? But I put up with it because these guys are cool.
Yes, you're enjoying it, really.
I was actually surfing the web about baseball, so there you go.
All right. Well, let's get to the topic at hand. Joseph, you mentioned that you've had a lot of good conversations and you get to talk to a lot of experts. I got to ask, with everything that you've seen and done in this space, are you an optimist or a pessimist with the way that you see, I guess, security, but let's focus on maybe identity security in the way it's going? Where do you fall on that spectrum right now?
I mean, I have to be an optimist. I have to be looking at the positive side of things because I do believe that we have, the great minds and the great experience and knowledge to really make the world a safer place and really make identity something that can be seamless and really benefit our society in many ways, whether it being in basically our private lives, in our social lives, our personal lives, and also in the companies we work for. I strongly believe that we can make it happen. My concern is that all the time is we see lots of new technologies and new trends and new ways of doing things, and sometimes we're making the same mistakes again. It's almost like repeating the same mistakes over and over again, and that's what concerns me. Is that we need to work together. We need identity experts. We need the security experts. We need the AI experts, the data analysts and data engineers to work together. If we work in things in silos, we end up repeating the same kind of challenges that we've had in the past. And that's what I kind of. So for me, I'm a very much a positive optimist, and that we can get there. But it does mean cooperation. It means collaboration. It means sharing experience and lessons, and not working in silos. And we have to do that now. We can't wait until things break, because things move at such a fast pace today. When they break, it happens. It has a serious impact to the world. So for me, I believe that we can get there. I just think that we have to make sure the right people are talking to each other and sharing lessons.
Joseph, I think I'm an optimist too, and Jeff's probably like, yeah, right. But I do think I'm an optimist. But this AI revolution is happening so fast. I do think there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable disruption that will happen over the coming years. I remember last year at EIC, you gave a keynote on AI versus AI. I'd like to talk about that for a minute. But I remember even at the time sitting there thinking like, this is future stuff. Now it's kind of like, okay, well we're in that. It almost would feel like old hat to talk about it. But first off, let's start with what is AI versus AI? What were you talking about?
Absolutely. The whole idea came from a specific incident that I worked on prior to the EIC conference, and it was really kind of me. It was that kind of wow moment. Oh my goodness! That is this going to be the future? And it was a situation where it was a financial fraud case that I was assisting one of the government certs on. And the financial fraud was basically, it was setting up fake payment systems and, leading buyers on the marketplace to go and give up their financial information and access to their bank unknowingly. And as I was investigating that, what I was doing was all the cases prior to that, when you're negotiating with the criminals, you're using basically either burned emails or using messaging applications, and you'll be chatting with people. And you commonly get into a conversation and you're kind of negotiating and hoping that they have some moral ethics that they will be willing to help. Not always the case. So sometimes they really treat you badly, and you're the criminal, not them, because you didn't protect the system. So, but until that point, I was always chatting with people, and then all of a sudden, this financial case that I was working on, that all of a sudden was a chatbot. I was talking to an AI agent, and it got me thinking. I was like, "This is really interesting." And one of the first times when I was scanning their infrastructure, and they realized what I was doing, and they disappeared very quickly. And it wasn't until the third time where I started basically getting to really understand the chatbot and the AI algorithm was working, and I was trying to find out ways to jailbreak it and ways to communicate and try to get it reveal more information. And then I started creating my own agentic AI agent, which was negotiating. So all of a sudden I sat back and I'm just watching these two agents fighting. One was basically, a ransomware, looking to get ransomware payment. And my agent was a ransomware negotiator. And it was almost like a DDoS attack in some regards, because it was quite comical for me watching. And it got me realizing that I'm just now watching two algorithms fighting each other. And trying to come to an agreement, trying to find common ground. And it was a kind of realization that that this might be the future, is that we might be just become observers and watchers of these activities. There might be certain risks that we want to have human oversight, certain kind of decisions that we want to have human involvement. But there's many things out there that we can delegate. We can delegate to these agents, whether it being book and travel, whether it being book and hotels, canceling them if we decide that and not everything's in place, or looking at make sure that your schedule and everything's according to plan. So for me, one kind of metaphor that I've used is, let's say not a light bulb, a clock. So we had the regular alarm clock, the really dumb alarm clock that you set. It goes off. You hope that wakes you up. Then you get into internet-connected clocks, where it makes sure that no matter where you bring that clock, it's connected to the internet and it's got the right time zone. It's always on time. It's it doesn't get out of sync. So you have the internet connect. Then you get the smart alarm clocks, which has some type of intelligence built in, some integration that you've got with the computer, and it's starting to get a little bit smart. And then think about the AI alarm clock. It's integrated into everything, into making sure, did you get enough sleep? You're looking at your health information, that, did you go to bed early that night? What's your optimum sleep time in order to make sure that the next day, does it reschedule your meetings based on how well you slept? Does it make sure that if you've got an important meeting that snooze button does not work and it gets louder the moment you hit it? So this is kind of, thinking about just those simple concepts, but think about that integrated into everything. You go to a coffee shop and all of a sudden, you've already had your second cup of coffee. And you're on your health AI agent is saying you've done with the coffee, and it won't let you buy a third one. It starts to take over your life a little bit in some regards, and that's where I kind of come up with the concept about the Tamagotchi, as the agentic AI was becoming a Tamagotchi. But after using these different algorithms over the past year, I actually felt like I'm becoming the Tamagotchi, the digital companion of the AI agent itself. But when you really think about that, it's exciting. About the ability to have all of these different delegations working for you and making our lives better. But they do come with risks. I mean, at the same time, is that in this identity and security, we need AI to be able to accelerate at the speed we need to go. If we continue down the process of manual, we will not get to a place which is manageable. So we need AI, but at the same time, AI needs us.
I think about that use case that you just talked about there with the coffee, and first up, my first reaction was like, no, not doing that. But if I wanted to be cut off for coffee, or at least reminded that, like nudge to maybe you've had enough, that could actually be a very good life-changing kind of event. So a lot of these things aren't black and white, what's right and what's wrong. And I think a lot of times you can flip the coin, whether the threat actor is potentially the good guy. So I'm trying to get away from using the term good guy and bad guy. But when you think about the threat actor, the attacker, and the defender, you think of it almost like the cyber arms race, or AI versus AI arms race. And my question for you is, like, who's winning that arms race?
That's a great question. I think when I look back in the advancements in the last couple of years, I think on the defender side, we've been doing much better. We've been using AI a lot more. Innovating technology, integrations, automation, delegating it to agents and algorithms. I think we've been advancing quicker. Unfortunately, on the reverse side of that, for the attacker side, is that they really haven't had to. Because the basics still work in a lot of cases. So not everyone's getting the advancements. It's not equal. It's not a democracy when it comes to security. In many cases, sometimes it's limited to the few because there is a cost doing it. So I do think in the defense side, we have accelerated, we have used this technology very, very well, and have probably closed the gap a little bit between the attackers. But now what's happening is the attackers are starting to leverage it more. They've got their own algorithms that don't have the guardrails. So, the guardrails are taken off and they can move things a lot faster. Couple of things I've seen in the real use cases where attackers have been using AI is in one is it lowers the bar for a lot of script kiddies who don't have any, they just have a laptop and internet access, and they can become very advanced and very sophisticated very quickly by only watching a couple of videos on the internet, and then getting their own agents and algorithms that do it a lot for them and a lot faster. So the access to becoming sophisticated is quicker for the attackers. The other side is in data exfiltration. That it used to be taking weeks to analyze the data that the attackers exfiltrated. Now they can do it in seconds. They just dump it into their machine learning algorithm, ask large language models questions. Where's the identities in this? Where's the credentials? Where's the passwords? Where's the tokens? Where's the credit card information? And they can get that in seconds. The acceleration that's happened. I will say that AI is a bit like it's a fuel, and it's an accelerant that makes it burn quicker. I use the term, it's a bit like the mushroom in Super Mario Kart. When you get if you play Super Mario Kart and you get that mushroom, it makes you go faster. But we had to learn that going faster doesn't make us better drivers. So that we had to be trained properly enough to understand how to do proper prompts, how to engage, how to interact, how it works in the background. If we don't learn, and it means we're sitting as passengers in the car without any control, and it going at a speed that makes us uncomfortable. So, and the other side as well is that language. It used to be Estonia used to have a protection. The language was a protection for the country. Now that protection is gone because the translations for attackers is instant to perfection. Now it's funny that we shouldn't be looking for grammar mistakes in the phishing campaigns and social engineering. If it's too perfect, it's probably written by an algorithm. Now it's a case that we should be looking for mistakes is an indication that it's done by a human. And
they love my emails, and my emails would all fly through.
It's almost like we have to change the algorithm now because of the sophisticated, phishing capabilities that AI has now created.
You're talking a lot about getting around these guardrails, and I think it's interesting because that was a question I wanted to ask you, because I always assumed that the AI versus AI somehow implied that the attackers had to be running their own local AI instance or something that didn't have guardrails, or that there was a bad guy, there I go with that term, a malicious LLM out there on the dark web that they were using instead of the large language models and kind of working around the guardrails. I assume there must be some other way that they're doing it. And Jeff will tell you, I've been using this term agent swarms a lot. Now, I don't use it because I thought of it myself or I've ever actually set up agent swarms, but the idea being that, you could multiply your attacks by having multiple agents, many agents, swarms of agents performing the attack. So one, I guess, am I right? Is there a whole dark web LLM existence, or is it simply just working around the guardrails?
It's actually, that's a great question. For what I find is it's both. What I find is that absolutely there's lots of models out there without any guardrails that have them stripped off. You've got evil GPT, which is literally exactly that purpose is get it to do malicious stuff for you. It's just the question is that what data and context does it have access to? That's what it really comes down to. Is can it scrape enough information to really be really damaging? But the other side of it is I've used a lot of the public models, which are meant to have the guardrails on, but you have to be able to understand about how to speak, how to speak prompt. So I think prompt is going to be a whole new dictionary, kind of verbiage that we'll get into. Is how to ask the questions in such a way that the models will help you do bad things. And so there's multiple things that I do think is as attackers will look for how to bypass a lot of the guardrails. They could turn in our good AI into being a bad AI. That's the concern, is that if they get enough power, we've seen it recently with a lot of the bot only community. That was an interesting concept that's created some big concerns, and I think that we look back in the years, a lot of the IoT devices that turned into DDoS botnets. We could see the same impact of AI, botnets that could not just be DDoS, but do anything malicious if they're able to bypass the guardrails. And I've even attempted I went through a scenario where I played the person who was forgot their password, and I used a public model and went to it and said, "Hey, I'm having a bad day. My boss is going to be really angry with me. I forgot my password. What can I do?" And it gave me recommendations. Try to find the hash. The hash is something that is the encrypted version of the password. So I was like, okay. So I came back and said, I found the hash. Can you help me recover my password? And now, because of the way that I was asking it, it was being very helpful, which is also a bad thing as well. When we're being polite to the models, it has a massive energy cost. So I even calculated my password recovery prompt, which cost us a couple of €1,000, and me just being polite to the algorithm. So we also have to understand about politeness. There's an inefficiency in being polite, and it's just our human nature that we feel that way. It's just like we're talking, and we'll compliment and say nice things and thank you. And we have to understand when we're in prompts, there is a cost. There's an energy cost, and there's an algorithm and a computational cost to that, which means that I believe there was in that analysis that we need but we need data centers, one for politeness and the other one for failures. So 2 data centers just to deal with being polite, and one for dealing with the failure rates, the inaccuracies that they create.
Yeah, when we were talking earlier, we were joking about this, that why are we polite to an AI? We're trying to garner favor so that when we're all one with the Borg, maybe we aren't on the bottom rung.
Or Jim, yeah, okay, you can go ahead and have that extra cup of coffee.
Absolutely. I'm finding it to get around that guardrail.
Well, if AI is listening to this, I for one appreciate our overlords. So pick me in the coming future battles.
Yeah, they'll definitely process through this. So, Joseph, I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask was, we're hearing a lot about OpenClaw. I've experimented with it myself. It seems like the perfect tool for something like this. Like, create a script and set OpenClaw at, and just run attacks 24 hours a day. Sorry, I didn't mean create a script. I meant create a skill.
Yes, it is a skill or a service. It can be. You can have multiple skills create an overall campaign as well. So those skills will be very specific to running certain kind of objectives, and then combined can become a campaign and a service. So absolutely, it's really where the collective, and then you can tell, to learn additional or to collaborate with other people's skills. It reminds me of the whole movie The Matrix, when you basically download how to fly a helicopter and how to, fight like a ninja. And you kind of, that's what we're doing when it comes to our digital lives. We have our core digital DNA, our digital footprint of us. And what we're doing is we're opening that up to like the Matrix, where we can say, I add this skill. It's almost like, where you go to university and you come out with a degree. Now, that is education system is going to be completely disrupted because of this. Is we will now have all the skills at our fingertips. It used to be, the whole education changed when we got in a calculator for maths. Think of that disruption for everything. Now we have knowledge at our fingertips with an agent, and that can really change. I had this idea years ago where it was going to be you bring your own identity to the company, and then also bring your own certifications and own software licenses. That was a kind of concept that I was thinking is like, no longer do I get the software from the company, but I will bring my own license to it. So we become much more of trades, back to that whole trade idea. But that's going to be also, again, we will now come with our own skills, our own agents. It was interesting last year at the Estonia cyber spike, or the Nordic cyber battle that they have every year. It was interesting is that there was a lot of kids who were competing for the cyber battle. The kid that actually did the best was not the most skilled technically. It was the one who had access to the agents, who had the skill. That's the person who actually won. And that's how we should be looking at going forward, is that if you're not using AI today, you're going to fall way behind. And there's a difference of being behind. It's about being behind, not in how much knowledge you have, but how much resources you can utilize to make a difference. So think of it as access to resources, access to computational power, access to knowledge. And that's what makes the difference. So the kid who actually did the most successful was the one who spent time learning AI, not the one who spent time learning hacking and capture the flag and how to gain access. It was the one who knew how to do prompts correctly and get the agents to do what he needed to do in order to be successful.
I feel like a big part of that is not just that knowledge, but also awareness.
Mhm.
So if you're even aware that these things exist, right, it's kind of hard to take advantage of something that I didn't know existed. And so keeping abreast of like everything that's happening and just generally being aware that, yes, this is possible or this thing could happen is enough, maybe even to just funnel it down to your little agent workforce behind you to say, hey, I heard about this. Can you do this?
Absolutely. It means realistically that we can potentially take on many jobs, a whole job of, as an entire workforce, as one person. It's quite interesting. One of the big things in Estonia that we've always been promoting for many years is the ability to do your tax returns and everything like within minutes. I think we talked about it previously in one of the previous episodes. Now, interestingly, as of I think this past week, because this month is tax return month, and we've introduced Agentic AI agents for citizens in Estonia called the CRAT, which is a whole different. We can have a whole conversation on that one alone. But actually, as of last week, one of the citizens actually had their tax returns filed by their Agentic AI agent, their skill, and the actually tax paid by the agent as well. So completely delegated human accountability to the agents. Of course, there has to be a signing. You have to sign eventually. So you have to do the authentication and you have to do the authorization. So there's those two components you still have to do. But everything else, from the filing to the payment of the tax, was done automatically by an agent. I do believe voting
in the U.S. doing taxes can be a real headache. I actually watched a video this morning where the guy did the federal tax return anyway, all with Claude Cowork. And then there's a website where you can do the electronic filing. So literally that's going to, just think about that. What's that going to do to all these tax filing websites?
Well, this is a big problem in the U.S. They've been fighting that for a long time. Now we're getting into politics, Jim, and I don't know if we want to get into that.
We don't want to get into politics, but I was just saying, so if anybody's interested in doing this, there's videos out there on YouTube.
Absolutely. It is a very disruptive, capability. We looked a couple of weeks ago, was the cloud security. Basically had a 10% drop in the whole cybersecurity industry from a stock market perspective, even though there was misunderstanding and about what the capabilities truly was, but just the fear had a massive impact and disruption. And that will happen across many areas. Education, to your point, government services will be completely disrupted from a lot of those capabilities. I do think that, eventually, I can delegate. I might be able to delegate the selection process to an agent for voting. I would still have, eventually, there has to be accountability. We still have accountability. I would not, because we have to look at the way that these systems work. They're not humans. They are basically two things. They're math-based, which is primarily kind of where they're best at, and then probability-based, which is about coming up with the best choice possible at that time with the context that they're actually given. So they're probability-based engines. So when it comes down to, do we want to delegate all decisions to that? That's where you get into life and death situations. Do you want to determine which surgeries take place and which don't? Do you want to get into, who people vote for and who they don't vote for using this system? So I do believe that we'll have to come up with a whole decision and risk-based approach into determining what are we okay as humans and being from this planet as AI systems making decisions for us. That's going to be a massive governmental kind of like I say challenge, and I think it's an important one because definitely I would not want all decisions made by AI. I would still certain things I wouldn't want to make decisions for myself.
And we've seen some of that, I'll call it blowback, right, with some of the major LLMs in the U.S. government, things like that. But we're not going to get into that. Let's shift to a different type of government. Let's talk NATO Lock Shields. This is something that you mentioned us during the prep side of things, and I'm not super familiar with it, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who maybe aren't. So maybe we start from kind of the very beginning of what is NATO Lock Shields, so that we can catch people up.
Absolutely. So for me, it's one of my favorite things. I get so excited about this topic. So NATO Lock Shields, it's an event that's been happening now this is the 16th year, and it has 40 plus countries who participate, not just NATO countries, but cooperating countries. And what they do is they come together every year. It's coming up actually in April. And I think when we actually were at EIC together last year, I was actually doing it at the same time. So during the day, I was like protecting the country. So what it basically is you have two countries, Borrelia and Crimsonia, who are these islands that pop up in the Atlantic Ocean once a year, and Crimsonia attack Borrelia. And then you have these 18 teams come together. So 18 teams, about 4,500 people across those 18 teams that get targeted by a red team who then target them over a 2-day period with 8,500 cyber attacks. So you have 30 minutes to get into the country and protect it. And you've got systems that simulate a real country's environment, from immigration to you've got learning systems, you've got financial systems, power grids, water supply, 5G networks, air traffic control systems, air defense systems. So you've got all these different complex systems all simulated as a working country and segregated and has networks and firewalls and so forth. And your blue team has to get in there, has to protect it, and then you come under live fire, like literally, and it's a stressful 2 days. I can tell you that it's a lot of communication, a lot of collaboration across the teams, a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of keeping systems up and running. And you learn a lot about these special systems. And there's AI being incorporated into a lot of it as well for the social media aspect. So when people don't have energy, then they start basically complaining, and there's lots of algorithms and guardrails put in place as well that the attackers will try to bypass those guardrails in the AI systems. So it's basically it happens over a 2-day period, though there's a lot of preparation that goes on for months beforehand, and it's a really educational. It really shows you that in order to be resilient, that you have to collaborate. We can't do things alone when it comes to cyberspace. And especially one of the key things that also comes out of it is the importance of identity, that we should be treating identity as a national critical infrastructure. That's, what from a country perspective, organizations should be treating identity within the organization as a critical asset. It's just not it's not IT anymore. Identity is a core part of the business, which is a pillar that the business operates on. The businesses should be asking themselves, and this is one thing it always gets highlighted as part of Lock Shields, the simulation, is without identity, you can't function. You're broken. You can't deliver your services. You can't keep the power grid running. You can't have people accessing networks. So for me, it's always important kind of areas that one of our strategies all the time from the blue team side is that we have to have subject matter experts getting onto the identity really fast, discovering them all, protecting them, putting the right security controls in place. Because without it, we can't, once you lose your Active Directory, for example, you're out, you're done. And then you lose points for restoring it back to its original image and getting again access back. So there's a lot of points that you get from basically doing reverts. And it really highlights that identity is the glue that makes businesses function today, and the criticality of that. And that's something that for me, it's the communication and the lessons I learned and the stress that I go through that. This year, I'm taking a bit of a backseat. I've been blue team member for a number of years and red team a long time ago. This year, I'm doing an observer. So I get to watch the blue teams and have fun by sitting back and seeing the stress that they go under, and learning from maybe hopefully, I will get some lessons for future blue team activity, and also that I can then bring to the community, the identity community, about how we what we did under those really stressful environments and lessons to make the world a safer place and to share those insights as well.
How long have you been involved with this? Sounds like you go back several years at least.
Yeah, I took a break for. I mean, back in it started around 2010 was the first year, and then it was called Baltic Storm or something else. It was a different name. Then I joined around 2012, 2013 when I was helping with the red team campaigns. And then I wasn't allowed to switch for a while. I had to wait until a certain time period passed, and I was very close to joining the Estonia team at one point. But I was adamant that if Ireland ever participated, because I'm originally from Ireland, so I was like, that's my allegiance.
So, national pride. That's fine.
Yeah, national pride. So I worked very hard. I got Ireland to join. Ireland's not a NATO country, so it had to be a cooperating partner. So I spent a couple of years trying to get them to join. They joined, and then eventually, a couple of years ago, they started participating in the exercises. So quite a long time I've been involved on and off.
We've got a few more things I want to cover, but I got to ask, I mean, you've seen this before AI. I'll call it before AI, right? And now you've seen this after AI. What is something that stands out of the before AI time period of this Lock Shields, thing versus now what you're seeing between, last year and then what do you expect this year?
So, I mean, absolutely. Before AI, it was learning a lot of the techniques yourself. And a lot of manual processes. So it was really the core set of the team. It was the skills were maintained in the team. So you had to make sure before planning, you had to make sure that your team had the right knowledge and skill sets for the systems that you're going to protect. Now you don't. You just need people who understand about how to have access to AI systems that can actually do that skill for you. So it's really changed. If it was the same method as before, we would be not improving. It just comes down to this core set of skills that we have. Now, basically, with the AI capability, we're accelerating our learning beyond what we could have ever done in the past. So it allows us to move faster and have access to. It's almost like the team doesn't need to grow anymore. We basically are growing our resource access, our resource capabilities and our skill set capabilities. And it's really getting to automation a lot of times. Once we've done it once, we don't need to manually do it again because we've got the agents who's going to do that for us the next time. So we're basically accelerating, I'd say, the resource from a human perspective through digital companions. So we've got many Tamagotchis that are now joining the team. Are making us perform and go as fast as you possibly can.
So I noticed I was looking kind of over the scoring from 2025 and kind of looking at it. It was so the three highest scoring teams of Lock Shields 2025 were the team of Germany and Singapore. So I'm guessing they teamed up.
Yep.
The team of Poland and France was second, and then third was team of Italy, Slovenia, and United States. Mm-hmm. How do you keep score? Is it like number of systems impacted? Do you get points for offense and defense? Tell me about how did Germany and Singapore win technically with the most points?
So it's important. One of the challenges, if you come in with a very security mindset, you're going to fail. That's because scoring is calculated on multiple things. Scoring is basically on how best you've hardened the systems. But if you've hardened it too much, there's also usability, and usability is actually a bigger part of the scoring. So if the users, there's simulation teams who will access all of the systems as they would be in real life, and if they're unable to access or unable to use the system, then you lose lots of points. So for example, if you put an EDR in place that is hogging CPU, that's going to impact. It's going to harden your systems. You're not going to get the red team. It was a funny comment from a few years ago, as the red team said that they didn't need to take DDoS the systems because the EDR system did it for them. So they were losing tons of points from DDoSing themselves, which is kind of So it's all about finding the balance. If you get the right balance between usability and hardening, that's what makes successful. And also is if you don't have to do reverts. So if you maintain accessibility to the systems And that's, again, why identity is critical, is you want to always make sure you've got the ability to access, because if you lose your credentials and you lose access to the systems, or the attackers change the password or change the token or key, that has massive damage for the service itself. So multiple kind of areas that get scored upon. And then we've got other teams who's doing digital forensics. You've got strategic command. You've got incident response and help desk as well, supporting the users. All of that factors into points. But hardening and usability are the two key things. And it sounds like those teams did really well. I remember that, France did well because they had their Olympic cyber protection team 2 years ago participating. So the team that was protecting the Olympics 2 years ago was the ones that were participating. And they wanted to make sure that, if you've got a goal in place, there's something that's big coming up, then that's what tends to give you a bit of motivation.
When these events take place, how do the learnings from it filter out into the community? Is it people like you that are like, hey, this is what I saw, and you go on security by default and kind of tell people about that? Are there papers, webinars, things that I'll call it normal people can glean and take back to their organizations and say, okay, here's something we saw in the real world. It's theoretically possible. Let's take that in. And if it's a risk that applies to us, here's how we can learn to defend against it.
So absolutely, it's a great question. I think it's a bit challenging as well, because it is a lot of the things are classified. So some are green and some are public and white. So you can get certain pieces of data that can be made public, but the real learning is from participation. Is having people participate as part of the teams or as part of the infrastructure, part of the observation. And when they go back to the organizations, they take away that knowledge. There is different information available. There's a couple of really good public videos about strategy and what they do. And I also have a talk that I share with the things that you can share publicly. So it's always a case of making sure that you're going through that, the TLP green light system about what you can share, what's allowed. So it's usually, there's limited, let's say, knowledge that gets shared. Not everything gets out there, but there is certain publications that does give insights. Participation is number one.
Participation number one. So I wanted to hit you with one more topic before we conclude, which is this EU AI Act. And you have some expertise in that. And I'm wondering if you could kind of give us an overview and let us know, is this the next GDPR?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And since I worked in GDPR as well, so I'd be happy to say it's not the next GDPR.
There's a lot of people shaking their fist right now at either their monitor or their speaker.
There was a lot of lessons learned. So, I've been thrown into the deep ends of all of these regulations over the years. I worked in GDPR back in 2008 as a technical reviewer. And then I got thrown into the EU AI Act back in 2018. So we think about a lot of this was happening before a lot of the AI hype lifted off. So these were things that was in preparation and realization early on. Even I think some of the early discussions was back in the early 2000s. So what I was brought into is I was representing Ireland as part of the subject matter experts. And we had these working roundtable discussions in the build-up to EU AI Act to understand about what was the best approach to make sure that we protect and keep the risk as low as possible, but at the same time adopting it with embracing it, with accountability and responsibility. So there's a lot of kind of ideas and some of the objectives that I was given as the subject matter experts is we were brought together and we had different use cases, and one of the use cases was law enforcement's acceptable use of AI in digital forensics and incidents. And it was interesting because ultimately when we started looking at it, if you take AI systems as a math-based approach and a probability system, is that it will make mistakes. It's built with inaccuracies. And actually, I remember talking to one of my Microsoft counterparts, is that they have defeated a lot of bad information for it to learn. If it's AI systems. If you tell them don't put your hand in the fire because it will burn, they had to learn what that burn it feels like in order to never do it again. So it's kind of that lesson learned. You had to give it the ability to learn from what is information which is inaccurate. So by nature, it's probability based. Is that it's based on context and based on learning. So from that, what we realize is if we allowed AI to 100% be able to do police investigations, is that we will not have the ability to make sure that it's perfect every single time. And it has to be perfect every single time. Because the moment that you take an algorithm and that algorithm makes a poor choice, it raises question of all the previous choices that it made. That's one of the downfalls of a probability system, is that you have to make sure that without explainability every single time how it came to that decision, and if these algorithms are working blind and we don't have the explainability very clear, then we can't use them for certain types of kind of tasks. And this is where it really gets into complications. So the outcome of this meant that because of the risk, then it was decided that in the EU AI Act, it would be a risk-based approach because of this. Because of all of these working groups came to the same conclusion, is that we can make best effort decisions, the best choice decisions, but we have to have explainability and we have to have accountability every single time. So therefore, it was decided that unlike GDPR was very different because we made some assumptions at the time. Things like PII, we made assumptions. And I will say that we should have separated personal information from personal identifiable information. It should have been two separate categories. And of course, that's retrospective. We can always look back and say, oh, well, that makes sense now. But with the EU AI Act, taking a risk-based approach where if the AI system decision-making has an impact to human life, then it needs to be basically regulated and protected with a certain level. And the less impact to life, the lower categorization rating, the less regulation or controls has to be put in place. And for me, that was a kind of acceptable, from the decision making from the working groups that I worked on. Because if we make a mistake, and one of the things is, if you send a lot of people to prison or you make a lot of decisions based on algorithms that basically you can't explain, at the minute it makes a mistake, everything gets questioned. And do you let everybody out? And that comes to a lot of, same with me when I worked in ambulance service. If I wanted to have an AI algorithm deciding which victims to go to, and again, we get into that situation. Do I send the ambulance to a 5-year-old kid in a car accident versus a 6-year-old male who's had a heart attack? Which one do you let the algorithm decide? Which one does it have the best chance of saving? And you get into all of those accountability and explainability questions. It becomes very challenging. There's certain scenarios that I would let AI decide, but the risk-based approach was the one that I think we have to have accountability. But we have to embrace it with responsibility as well. We can't just not use it. So there has to be a way forward. So I do think that the EU AI Act was the best outcome out of all of the working groups and decisions. I think that it does appear to be a bit of EU slow adopting. However, it's worst case if we actually unleash it. And we can't put that genie back in the bottle. So, and we're starting to see some of those impacts. Is that if we take something, there's no going back. But we have to do it with caution. This is a technology and a capability that if we don't have the controls in place, bad things could happen on a large scale.
For someone who said that they were an optimist at the very beginning, I feel like it kind of took a little bit downer here in the last 2 or 3 minutes.
So while I'm an optimist and positive about it, I do believe we can get there. That's what from a positive side is that I do believe that we can, as a human race, make the right decisions. I have to believe that we will use it for good, and not maliciously, which I get concerned about is that if we take the guardrails off, there's no putting the guardrails back on. They're gone. That's the concern.
All right. Well, I'm going to inhale the hopium and hope for the best. Let's try to pivot this into a lighter note and kind of end the show on maybe something a little more positive. You talked about the podcast, Security by Default. We'll have a link in our show notes. People will check out that. Fantastic. As being your hobby. But you also said that you mentioned, I think, that you do like scuba diving and snowboarding, and you had some great pictures that I think I saw on LinkedIn around some of the captures that you're getting at the top of a mountain, right, covered in snow. If you had to choose one and the other you can never do again, do you pick snowboarding as what you can do, or do you pick scuba diving?
Scuba diving. It's so. I mean, that's a hard choice because I love both. It's something that I really enjoy doing both. If I can still go up the mountain in the snow and not necessarily be snowboarding, I'd be fine. But scuba diving, it's such a passion. I've got lots of goals set. For future. I've done some sort of certifications. I did the rescue diving course last year because I got my kids into scuba diving as well, and we all do those activities all together. But yeah, scuba diving, it's such a it's truly the ability to go and explore. Sometimes things that haven't been seen before, and you're in a completely different atmosphere. It's such beauty, and you're when you're there, up on the hill with the snowboard. I've got my helmet on, I've got my music blasting, and I can still chat with people. I'm still connected to the world. Underwater, you're disconnected. There's you don't have your phone with you. You don't have your laptop. You're completely there, and the only thing you're concentrating on is your breathing and your surroundings. And it's a completely amazing feeling. And when you're seeing a shipwreck, or you're seeing coral reefs, or you're seeing amazing kind of fish life, and it's such a for me, it's something I really love doing and will continue to do. And my goal is to go and do my dive master eventually, and explore the oceans more.
Jim, have you? I'll throw the same question to you. Do you pick
So
snowboarding or scuba diving?
I don't do either. But here's what I
don't
will
do
say.
either.
So what I took from what Joseph was saying, that I was like, I know that. So I trained for a triathlon. It was a long time ago, but the swimming was one of the hardest parts. Swimming for like an hour as a training is like pretty boring after a while. There's everything else you can do with music playing. So I actually invested in this thing that you put under your swim cap, and somehow you didn't have anything in your ears, but you could still hear your music. Now, I'm not saying you should bring that into scuba diving, because I think that disconnection is probably a benefit. But if you're swimming for an hour 5 times a week, having some music to go along is a nice thing. So it is out there.
Well, music helps with pace too, right? And that's why people listen to soundtracks with a certain beats per minute or whatever it may be.
That was one of the things that I trained for. I did a few marathons, and I trained for those with music. And then you come to find out when you do an actual marathon, they will not let you listen to music. I'm like, what? I've got to run for like 4 hours, 5 hours with no entertainment, no podcast, anything.
Well, Jim,
That's
you
the
can
way it
join me
goes.
over at the breakfast area with like a plate of waffles and bacon, and watch the runners go by and, cheer them on. That's what I did when my wife ran marathons. Was I'd see her at the starting point, let her go run, and then I'd go get a really nice breakfast and meet her at the finish line. That's my idea of a marathon.
Yeah, I mean, I was participating in the marathon, but usually by the time I finished, all the waffle stations and everything had closed down. I'd be lucky if there was somebody there to give me my finisher T-shirt.
Your banana or whatever it is that you get, your chocolate milk at the end.
There were bananas and beer were all gone.
Yeah, well, see, there's plenty of room at the buffet if you want to join me.
We gotta run faster. That's
well, yeah, that's true. I saw somebody finish. I think it was the Boston Marathon in like 2 hours and 14 minutes or something ridiculous. And I was like, I don't know if you've seen that video, but there was like, I think it was Boston, and the guy who was in the lead, I mean, he had like 100-yard lead with only a couple 100 yards to go, and the guy who's in second just barely made the push past him to win.
Yeah.
You saw it?
Yeah, I saw it. And the guy who was leading literally just fell right over the line.
He fell over the line.
But he also got led on the wrong path, I think, right? By the motorcade or whatever. It was like before that. Is that the one we're talking about? Where
I'm not sure.
Even before the finish line, that gap got closed because the motorcade like turned off in front of him, and he went that way, and then had to double back. Not very far, but a little bit back to go back, and that certainly helped with it as well.
Yeah, I didn't see that part, but I did see that the person was leading was very fatigued, was really struggling. So even when they got to the end, it was a jump over the finish line where the other person all of a sudden just got this energy from basically within, and all of a sudden just saw the opportunity and sprinted.
At the same moment you saw, like, you felt bad for the guy who lost, but the guy who just like found it somehow to push his way to win.
Mhm.
Human triumph, I think, is what you called it. Like, man, you felt both of those in that same second.
Yeah,
I'd be
absolutely.
mad.
Yeah.
I'd be mad that the motorcade, went one way and I was supposed to go another, and be like, "Come on, really?" All right, let's go ahead and end it there. Joseph, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and hours. I hope we'll see you at EIC here in a couple months. Give you the
I
official
will be.
fist bump of gratitude,
Yep.
and maybe actually get a chance to like sit and talk. I mean, I know that we've seen each other at a few different conferences, but man, it seems like whenever I attend conferences, I'm like I'm hustling and bustling from one thing to another, to a meeting or like whatever it may be, and hopefully we can be a little more relaxed next time.
Likewise, when there's certain conferences that I think I try to take a little slower pace, and EIC is one of them. I do have a speaking session at EIC this year, so I'm really excited about participating. And so I will. My plan is to take a bit slower pace. I've got RSA conference coming up soon, and that's where I got a speaking session as well. And that one is going to be crazy busy. That's where like yourselves, when you're there at a conference. Not a minute goes by. You're just constantly kind of on the go, moving and engaging and networking. Which is really exciting. Is what I enjoy doing, but it is mentally and physically exhausting.
There's a lot of demands for time and people's attention, and I feel bad when I can't get to everybody, but it's just the way it is. Something to do about it.
Yeah,
All
and I always try to, dress up for these events, but Joseph is the GQ, man. He's like the guy with
sharp
the
dresser, man.
three-piece suit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
I
getting
almost
me
don't
in
recognize you sometimes.
But yes, and Jim, you do as well. I mean, there's a few of us who like we dress how we want to feel, and it's yeah, I do like to put on it's an opportunity to put on a nice shirt and a waistcoat and tie. So
Yeah.
You lost me at waistcoat. I'm more of a jeans and a polo if I can get away with it. Maybe a t-shirt and a blazer if I'm feeling fancy. But
for me, it depends on the conference.
that's just me. Yeah, I want to be comfortable. Look, I'm going to be in this thing probably for 12 hours. Like, all right, I don't need to like the full get up. My hat, my tip of the cap to both of you for taking on that burden and showing us how it probably should be done. I'm just not willing to cross that line yet.
Oh, there's time.
There is. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Joseph, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll have links in our show notes for people to connect with you on LinkedIn, a link to the Security by Default podcast, the NATO Lock Shields for people who are interested in learning more about what that is. And yeah, so we'll leave it there for this week. Thanks everyone for watching and or listening. You can find us on the web, idacpodcast.com. Don't forget to use those discount codes on our homepage there for EIC or Identiverse or whatever other future conferences that we might be partnered up with. And we'll talk with everybody in the next one.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.